Good evening. Thank you so much for coming. Bonsoir. And a huge thank you to Sophie and everyone at the Château and also at the Foundation for hosting me. It's an honor to be here at the Château de Lavigny this month and to be working and writing. I'm delighted to be doing so in all languages that I speak. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Grazie mille. The only ones that I know. And all the languages that I don't know, I'm thrilled. And I'm very happy to be reading tonight with Claudine and Mathieu and to share this residency with Ez and Tarek. It's a privilege and it's a very special group. The German writer Goethe wrote, "One ought, every day at least, sing a little song, listen to a good poem, see a fine picture, and if possible, to speak a few reasonable words." And I hope this evening to do a little of his directives. I'll be reading from both of my collections. Et je voulais juste vous saluer aussi en français. Bonsoir. Merci d'être venu et un grand merci à Sophie et tout le monde au château et la fondation de m'accueillir. Je suis vraiment honorée de faire partie du château et de la résidence ici. Je suis ravie dans toutes les langues dont je parle et celles dont je ne parle pas. Mais il y a toujours le temps, j'espère. Et je suis très contente de lire ce soir avec Claudine et Mathieu. Merci beaucoup. Sleepless Nights of Marine Life. At a party the other night, a lady told me about this study she'd read that sleeping pills cause early death. Like they lop off a couple years, she said. And I thought, what about chemo or double-crossing Hecate? That was near the kitchen sink, and they were almost out of champagne, and it was hard to get excited about the sleeping pill study, because she is the kind of woman who would tell you that sea monkeys are bad for you, for instance, make bad pets, that tinkering with fate in a glass bowl brings bad karma, like, you can't play God, you know, she'd say, and go back to dissing sleeping pills, leaning against the sink, metal bright on her back. It was night and the moon a mint under my tongue. Later I'd like to sleep with my hair on my pillow, and in the morning rise with my hair not on my pillow but on my head. And I was trying to make the champagne last longer, and the doctors told me, Madame, rien ne vous est interdit. And one by one, and when a doctor tells you champagne is good for you, you take them at their word, because there are only so many words that you can take. And to the lady at the party, I said yes a lot of times, but I didn't mean it, because I like sea monkeys and think they'd live fine in a glass of champagne. Add brine and algae, sea babies no bigger than a bubble, and then I was so small. Moon, I said, you blue insomniac, move over, make room for the rest of us. In the Salon of Madame Miklos Radnyoty in Budapest, Hungary, the epigraph is from Miklos Radnyoty's poem Postcard 1, and it reads, "The road whinnies and rears up. The sky gallops. You are permanent within me in this chaos." She used to teach French, Russian, speaks about disappointment. In translation, there's a heat wave outside a communist monument not far away. Dido, her long little dog, sits at her side. Do you know my Russian friends? She's talking about Paris and the Rue Cujas. Her French is like yesterday. I start to say, the poems of your husband, the war. Have a biscuit, she says. Dido pulls her long lank around the living room. Have a cigarette, she says. We share one. The pleasure to read is gone, she says. We will drink black coffee, she says. I had long hair once. She says, I'm a living tombstone. Madame, before this part of the night is over, before I have to go away from you and Dido and from the Danuba you see from your rooms, before you open the door and walk with me down the stairs, the doors kings never touch, may I ask, we carry this between us, the sky, coffee cups, chaos. On a one-way street in Debrecen, Hungary. In the car we pass the Dina Dina and the girls, my father sighs, watermelon and girls, roadside. It's August now. Every time it's August. In the car, it was so cold that I had to put on more clothes. His. Imagine Romania, the late 1960s, faces in a fog. Fields at night. Girls expecting. The dogs. Dream your Transylvanian dreams. That time, my father lost his Swiss Army knife in the car. That time, I carried him through the gates of Budapest in my arms. I remember driftwood, for Georges Perec and Joe Bernard. I remember making mud pies with friends behind our apartment when I was 8. I remember the crunch, very gritty, when we tasted them once. I remember one of the friends, maybe his name was Dan, and Dan looking on, standing on the train tracks. I remember his high-waisted, longish black shorts. I remember loving ceramics class in 2nd or 3rd grade, loving it because the teacher was cute, Mr. Smith. I remember how ceramics class smelled like baked beans cooking. I remember pouring hydrogen peroxide on the roots of my hair with my friend at the beach. Nags Head, North Carolina, 27959 USA. I remember running back from the beach to the hotel room after 30 minutes to check and see if my hair was blonde yet. I remember pouring more peroxide on it because it needed to be blonde that minute. I remember that minute being divine. I remember driftwood. I remember a hotel and its smell of rattan and sand and rain. I remember seashells on shelves and mantels, and the big piece of driftwood in the darkened sitting room. No one ever sat in there. I remember saltwater taffy, that was what summer was because it was Nag's Head. I remember dressing up in old Western outfits for funny photos with my friend. We dressed up like saloon girls. I remember not really knowing what a saloon was and holding my toy rifle. The photo was going to be in sepia. I remember we giggled our heads off until the guy took the photo, and for that moment, our image carked down on our heads and swallowed us whole in his lens, camera obscura, downside up, and I remember he did it again and again, kept shooting, and we weren't dead, and we weren't afraid. One of my favorite French writers is Honoré de Balzac, who wrote, tout d'abord en français, Les grandes histoires d'amour commencent avec du champagne et terminent avec des tisanes. So great love affairs start with champagne and end with tisane. And I would say along the way there's a whole lot of coffee. And I dedicate this poem to the writers here and to Sophie and Jens Martin, who know that I love coffee, let's put it that way. This poem takes place in Napoli and it's called Café Restreto with Amnesia. Horns and shouts and mandolins, an underthump of rap music and potholes. No street address, just sheets flying in the wind, white flags, drying under a ruthless sun. We're at Ziotoni's, but that's not the name, he says. It's the Bar Esposito, a scent of sulfur from up the street. Our coffee is it, he puffs, and orders 2 at the bar. I came from up the street with him, on the via of someone to get to this via of something else, with its smell from the days of Pompeii. This isn't really the Bar Esposito, and the owner isn't a zio, an uncle, he says. His name isn't Tony, it's Roberto. Tiny cups of water in front of us, then 2 thimblefuls of black gems. It's that kind of amnesia on Sunday morning, somewhere between Napoli and Sicily. He looks down into his cup. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 seconds for sugar to sink. Good. He nods to Zio Tony, who maybe isn't a Zio, but maybe Roberto or someone else. And he stirs. A sweet cake and 2 sips. Small burning, then full, dark bloom. This also takes place in Napoli, and it's called the Vesuvius Envious. One night, late, a wild dog barking in the courtyard, you wake up and feel the volcano at your back in bed with you. Ash and damp heat, and all along the body the cloy of sulfur, spiders, and cinders. It's a presence at the back of the neck. It's dangerous, but you can't help it. You don't know the danger, the green below your feet, the moist white heat. You've read about it and you've seen pictures, maybe even in those figures at Pompeii. You like to brag about it, the gritted taste in your mouth. It's danger that makes you like this, that makes you big. The Vesuvius, envious, that green bruise against you, is no dead God. And what would a poetry reading be without a love poem? So this is mine. To my one love's letter, my darling V, the alphabet is anorexic. There's not enough flesh to express what I mean. A, B, C, T, U, V. Suffice it to say, my heart is the verb you conjugate perfectly. V marks the spot, dark and hot, where I'm under my one love's letters spell. So a few years ago, I was in a period of time where I wasn't feeling very inspired, and I wanted to continue writing. And that sometimes happens. And so I love the sonnet form. And I started writing what I call street sonnets, where it's really easy, anyone can do it. And it helped me get through a period of time where I really wanted to be writing. So you take a piece of paper and you take a pen and you go out on the street, and you stand on one street, you write one line of poetry, walk to a different street, second line, third line, etc., until you have 14 lines of poetry. And so I thought, well, this is great. So I tried it in different cities, in Rome and in Napoli and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Charleston, West Virginia. But it works anywhere, so I highly recommend it. The sonnet, street sonnet I'll be reading tonight takes place in Napoli, and the title, To Course Across More Kindly Waters Now, comes from the first canto of Dante's Purgatory. Did this whole trip alone, she says, at Napoli Centrale, train station Ti Amo, siamo at Piazza Cavour, Napoli under the rain and lilac trees, Via Constantinopoli, a massive sculpture of David in the center of the stairway, high ceilings, I suppose, suppongo, one says. The sun comes out and the lady wearing a coral necklace threaded with a black cord comes by and can give you directions. Blue sky now, pizza on the street, not just any pizza, the pizza. Pompeii red, arches in yellow, Rosa Antica. This red is famous. Galleria, gray and white arches. A dog walks out into the street near the open-air cafe bars. A woman with long, dark braids stares as she passes by the bus station in front of the Piazza Dante. And here is Dante, 7 feet tall, arm extended over a wine bar, near Greek ruins where Cavani, soccer player on a sticker, is a saint. And then the history of art starts here, in a stairwell with people smoking. And I will finish with the poem that Sophie mentioned, Sirenka, which is the final poem in my second collection. I was at a job interview the other day, and they asked if I wasn't doing what I was doing, what I would like to do, and I told them, be a mermaid. And they looked at me like, what the? And whose stick is she trying to shake anyway? This is a job interview, not a joke. And that's when I said, really, I'm not kidding. It might not show that I have any experience with that on my resume, but some things don't fit on the page. Huh, they laughed. She says she wants to be a sea cow, basically, and drink from shells. Like she knows what she's saying. I didn't think I'd get the job after this, and think I didn't want it to begin with, but you don't have to not listen when someone tells you stuff. I mean, they were the first ones I told about this, and it makes you think, maybe you think too much sometimes, and that whatever skills it takes to be a mermaid, I can learn them. You see, I told them, I can swim and dive and decide later about drowning the sailors. Sailors are useful and sometimes cute, and not every mermaid has to do that killer sea singing, and any luring I'd keep to myself. I applied for your job because there is nothing tempting about it, and I'm good at hiding things. Well, they said, we don't need someone who wants to not be part of our team. We're about industry and overtime, not sea cows. Don't call them sea cows, I said. Call a name a name. I would not tattoo Lorelei rocks on my arm, for example, if I get this job. I would promise to not talk to the fish in the fish tank too much and not wear revealing miniskirts. Oh, the fins. Lady, they said, we've got a lot of candidates to choose from, and we're just saying no. Discrimination in the workplace. But sounds like you would rather be a sea monster and stuff. And if you come here, we'd have to deal with complaints and police reports because hiring an aquatic creature these days can be tricky. It sounds like you're talking about giving all this up, they said, to be fusiform. It's not practical to not have feet. About some things they were right, and for sure I would spend time messaging pirate friends and doing my own stuff, because sometimes in life you have to go in the direction you have to go, and sometimes that's straight to the sea, your arms steering waves and onward to estuaries, Sirenka, maid of the wave, sun on your back. This is immense. This is not somewhere else. Hey, I said, look out the window and up. Repeat after me. Rise, rise, rise. Thank you very much.